Good morning, Karolina Heter-Procieska. I'm a journalist, and for many years I have also been involved into healthcare, and I'm sure many of the speakers will confirm that. Health is part of the economy, and this is not a joke. It'll be my pleasure today to spend some time with you. It's the second meeting devoted to the presentation of Access Gap report that shows us data concerning the access to innovative medicine technologies, not just in Poland, but also in other countries. So it's a bigger pleasure even that I was able to meet with you during the first presentation. But what are those 2 years against the backdrop of 30 years of the history of innovation in Poland? But that story can be told by the strong arm support of Mr. Michał Bliniek, the director. Applause, please.
Powiedziano mi, że dopiero teraz mogę zacząć mówić.
A pan pamięta? Do you recall the early days? I have to, because that was when I joined in pharma. So the times for excuses for being a newcomer is over. Okay, over to you then. Yes, you need to be self-assured and know what you're talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our second meeting, to the Access Gap report presentation, how to neutralize the gaps. And the gaps are in access to medication, and in this case, we're talking about neighbors and in the Visegrad group. What are we going to talk about today? First of all, what we have and what has changed. A lot has changed over this year, which seems to be good news. But it seems that even better news is that on the basis of the data that we will be presenting to you, but also our new tool that we are going to be presenting to you as well, we'll be able to draw a better picture of the needs, and we'll be able to better address the solutions in making the best top-of-the-art therapies available to patients, as well as diagnostics. But before we get into the details about what the reports contain and the new tool, we would like to show you, due to our 30-year anniversary, 30 years of innovation, there's been a lot of jubilees for various organizations. So we've asked the people that are the second most important people after patients, that is physicians, to talk about their experience with innovation and what the innovation means to them and to their patients. What's the value of medicine innovations for patients? The benefits for patients coming from new, modern, innovative therapies in the last 3 decades in diabetology. This is something I can recall very well because it's been 30 years of my work. This is a breakthrough in the treatment of type 2 diabetes. This is a breakthrough in the philosophy and therapeutic thinking. Neurology is one of the fastest growing branches of medicine. This is happening thanks to new technologies that are entering the field of diagnostics, but also the treatment. Innovation has allowed us to look at cancer not as a black and white reality, but from the point of view of a high-definition, colorful television. Cardiology is one of the fields of medicine where modern technologies are early tested and very quickly implemented into clinical practice. For over 20 years of working with my patients, I have witnessed a real drug revolution. We are currently able to treat over 80% children with cancers. We don't only have cytotoxic chemotherapy, but we have molecular targeted treatment, precision targeted and tailor-made, and immunotherapy, which changes the reality for lung cancer and melanoma. New therapies, immunotherapy, monoclonal antibodies, as well as the latest achievements, cellular immunotherapy. CAR T.
Musiało dojść do lepszego poznania
We
biologii
needed
choroby. I
to
to jest
find
punkt
out
wyjścia,
about the biology
któremu
of the
zawdzięczamy
disease, and
nowe
that's
cele
the
terapeutyczne i to, że te
breaking
nowe
point
leki, nowe cząsteczki stosujemy.
that we had for new molecules. New technologies in diabetology improve the comfort of living for the patients and make opportunities for a longer lifespan without complications. New drug solutions for type 2 diabetes give bigger opportunities to our patients to simplify their therapy. We are changing the course of chronic neurological diseases that so far were considered untreatable. This is changing our working conditions for our neurologists. Huge advances and new therapies. We are hoping that they will improve the outcomes in children with cancers and hematological diseases. On the other hand, in people who have recovered, they will contribute to an improvement in quality of life. For heart failure patients, we can observe 6 times increase in their survival from the point of view of the 30 years of implementing new drug therapies. Our patients can work, they can live a normal life because they take molecular drugs or immunotherapy. That's very important. They also don't have to be hospitalized for long-term stays. These are several hours or perhaps minutes of an IV treatment, or just tablets taken at home and then follow-up visits. That changes their perspective. Implementing new drugs has allowed a large group of patients to be treated, and for other patients it has given them an opportunity to extend their life expectancy and improve their quality of life so that they can enjoy the time that they have been given thanks to the drug. Acute leukemia or myeloma did not give a chance of survival 30 years ago. Today, these patients do survive. So, the organizers have gone so far with their innovative solutions that we're talking not just about drug technologies, but also innovative tools, tools that would be very helpful for journalists. Magdalena Władysiuk, a physician, will tell us about it very soon, but first we will go through the results of the latest Access Gap report. I've had some fears, sir, last year. Were we going to be sad this year or not? We were all wondering what things would show, but reports like this and tools like this allow us to understand what's happening even better. And good things are happening. That's right, good things are happening. The minister is not here today, Mr. Minkowski, but if you visit his office, you will see trophies and medals to evidence the progress. But I think data is even more important than trophies, so let me demonstrate that. Access Gap. Most of you were here last year, but let me just remind you what this tool is. Access Gap is a virtual analysis of what has happened in specific therapeutic areas in terms of access to innovative therapies in the Visegrad Group, so the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary and Poland. You will have had the opportunity to notice, I'm sure, that for a few weeks we've been publishing news from the WAIT report. That report shows a simplified picture of access to innovative medicines throughout Europe. When creating Access Gap report, our ambition was not just to make reference to those countries that have been in the EU for a very long time and are decades ahead of us, but we wanted to look at our neighbors close to us, both in terms of history and the path that we've gone through the last 30 years. We wanted to see what challenges we have to face, all of us, and how specific countries are dealing with them, and how we can take advantage of our experience and take a glimpse at what's happening next door. What's important is that the Access Gap report is based on indicators. It is not just a 0 to 1 fact-finding thing. We added on top of that more indicators, and I will say a few words about them in a minute. And those access limiting KPIs is limitations in reimbursement, accessibility in time from registering to reimbursement, compliance with international guidelines, which to us is one of the most important parameters. Since everywhere throughout Europe we hear that patients should be treated in the same way, and according to world and guidelines and European guidelines, it should be done the same. Participation of patients treated with modern therapies, and that's important as well, whether patients have access to those therapies. We know that it's not an easy thing to do. Widespreading new therapies, reimbursement of molecular tests, and access to advanced diagnostics. And it's very difficult to talk about choosing and opting for treatment unless, of course, we can determine whether a specific drug will be effective for that patient. Now, regarding the whole scale of our assessment, we are not using figures anymore. Instead, we decided to use color codes from green to, let's say, navy blue, where green is low gap, low differences in access, and dark blue accounts for very pronounced differences. Now, we can, of course, assume that it's 0 to 100, but I think it's much better in colors. It can be more nuanced as well this way, because it's just not a simple thing to show figures. Now, last year, Poland was at the very end, one of the last 4 countries in all the parameters, and the methodology that's been used for all the countries in all the therapy areas was exactly the same. Last year, we were at the very end of the rank. But the 12 months have brought about some changes. We've gone up by 11 points, and we're ahead of Hungary and Slovakia. The Czech Republic is still ahead of us. It seems that our report could perhaps be used for further debate to discover what is better in the Czech Republic to make their access improved. These are the colors. From dark blue, we have gone into, let's say, sea blue. We're hoping that the tendency towards green is going to continue, and it's not going to just be algae in the sea. Now, improvements in the 3 main areas that we have split therapies into. Oncology, that's an improvement by 13 percentage points. Rare diseases, that is an improvement of over 20 percentage points, and chronic diseases 10 points. Now, there are different therapy areas, different challenges linked to them in different patient groups. Still, what we can talk about and what we can be proud of, all of us, both as representatives of pharma companies, but also the public partners in the Ministry of Health, we can be proud of the progress we've been able to achieve. It looks as though this is a picture of good cooperation and something that's still happening. The Reimbursement Act that we are all familiar with, it can be improved. Progress can be achieved without necessarily changing regulations. And we've been talking about it for a while. Now, without going into details step by step, let me just showcase this to you. Progress is seen in many areas, such as diabetes, for example, where it's minimum, just 1 point, but it needs to be seen that there are such points, such as acute leukemia, SMA. We heard a lot about this last year. We are very, very advanced here. And it seems that we should be advocating that, announcing that. Now, challenges, still, diabetes and Parkinson's. Now, SMA, the leap was the most pronounced in this area, as you will have heard and seen. Some of you have been witnesses of that. We've got all the most important therapies now available. Two most important elements is time from registration to reimbursement. In Poland, this is one of the longest periods in the EU. Aid report and access gap report confirm that. And the second challenge that seems that needs to be addressed are limitations in terms of population, so limitations for some patient groups. The ministry is quite strong in their negotiating stance. We're trying to get those areas extended. Now, in Parkinson's disease, which is one of the new areas that we have researched, still in this area we are at the very end of Europe and the Visegrad Group. And it seems that there's a big room for there's a lot of room for improvement here. Now, for diabetes, I have mentioned this before. This is the lowest increase in the area that has been researched. Parkinson's disease is there for the first time. Diabetes, not for the first time. We can see that in the neighboring countries there have been some changes. Let's look at Hungary, for example. The access has actually deteriorated. There were some changes in regulations in this country and changes in attitude. Unfortunately, the changes do not always promote access. Sometimes the access is good or acceptable in the ranking, but the country may drop, and that's something that we should have at the back of our minds. It's not always true that we will go ahead. Sometimes what we have should be protected and maintained, and we should only change the things that don't really work very well. And yeah, the wait time in Poland, wait time for reimbursement in diabetes is 1900 days in Poland, so that's a very, very long period. That the patients have to wait for access. Now, for asthma, the differences between countries in the Visegrad Group are very big, 24 points. Now, in Poland, it's not too bad compared to other areas. We've scored 61 points, and we are sky blue, so we're going towards green. Hopefully, the Czech Republic is green. Now, the wait time, if you look, is what is actually creating the biggest challenge. Now, ladies and gentlemen, general conclusions that we would like to present to you, other than to invite you to take advantage of our tool, so that in the areas that are specifically interesting for you, please explore our website. There is a lot of information there, detailed data. We have analyzed all of these indicators that I spoke about earlier, and I'm sure you can find a lot more information there that I can communicate right now. Two basic challenges that we are talking about is time and population. Those are the two areas which still require more attention when it comes to providing access to new drugs. We would be hypocritical if we said that it's not happening. It is happening. It needs to be appreciated. Still, what's important for us is to make sure that the trend and the pace that is noticeable right now can be kept maintained, so that some decisions can be made that could impact the whole reimbursement process, that this shouldn't be hindered. Now, as I've heard from the Minister of Health, the willingness to extend the population of people covered by free medication is there, but the financial outlay on treatment should be increased so that our patients can be treated in accordance with international standards. That's all from me now, and I give the floor back to you. You got an extra minute, sir. Thank you so much. Michał Liniak, General Director of Infarma, presented the latest conclusions, and now Magdalena Ładysiuk will tell us about the latest tool that is called the Polish Reimbursement Radar. Over to you, madam.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today I would like to present a new tool that was developed this year. It deepens the analysis of the Polish system, and I do hope, and Infarma hopes, that it will become a new tool that you will be able to see every second month with new announcements. This is the target, that within 10 days from the new announcement we are going to have the website updated with all recent information about the introduced molecules, and this, in a moment I will explain how to use it. Everything will be visible on the website, so you can enter our website, or you can simply enter the dynamic report, specific dedicated report. It's an interactive website developed together with the ministry. So various communities will be able to comment on that. Various communities also will be used this for various needs. First and foremost, the main radar that you can see on the screen, the more towards the center, the closer to the objective, to the target. So this shows how close we are to improve the accessibility. So we improve we analyze the medicines registered as of 2012, the new indications and new molecules. 2015, sorry, everything that was introduced since 2015 has been monitored on an ongoing basis. So we will see actually new announcements, and the indicators will change if we see the improvements. So the indicators will just get closer to the center. As you can see, there are various diseases, infectious diseases, stagnation here. If you go on a certain spot, you will get some indicators, numbers, you can use them. Drug technologies, only 5 out of 84 drug technologies in Poland that are reimbursed. And this is the example of 2019, 26. From 26 we moved to 42%. So oncology is the fastest growing area, the biggest priority for the Ministry of Health. That's why the dynamics of changes is bigger here. What kind of diseases have we analyzed? And you can click and you can go into the therapeutic areas, individual therapeutic areas. In a moment I will show you more information about it. The number of molecules analyzed in individual areas, and in total 642 drug technologies have been analyzed already, and we are now showing where exactly they are reimbursed. How this happened? Scrolling down the website, you will be able to analyze in a simplified way. Just a moment, please. In a moment you will see the number of technologies. This is the number of dots. The green one accounts for reimbursements. You will see the exact data. In total, the number of non-reimbursed vis-a-vis reimbursed molecules. These are the main areas. In some areas like cardiology, less innovations available, but cardiology, as we can see, is not the area that the ministry is really taking care quickly, unlike the oncology and neurology, for instance. Some of the areas are better taken care by the ministry. From the perspective of the analysis of the situation, you will be able to see the changes in this dynamic situation. If you see the shift from 2019 to 2023, improved all areas, and that's why Director director already said that we had some progress here, and thanks to this tool, we can go deeper in our analysis to see the gaps and differences between the different areas. We can also follow the dynamics year on year, what has been changed, where the ministry took certain steps, and what's more important, this is updated on an ongoing basis, and we are going to visualize it with different colors so that the whole picture is more clear for the user. Oncology is a dominant along with the rheumatology. No osteoporosis here, however, so this is a bit different picture. Osteoporosis was actually used as a common disease or analyzed as a common disease. What else can we see here? We see the situation, the picture year on year, and you can click here, and in a given year you will see a number of registered molecules, reimbursed molecules, and the ones that were withdrawn from the reimbursement. So you can monitor the situation year on year and analyze this data, compare them. What else? If you go really deep, you'll be able to verify something that probably will be most interesting along with the announcements, each and every announcement. And let me start from the very bottom. If you click here, you will be sent to the announcement, and you will be able to verify, to read all these, all the contents. These areas can also be changed. You can also change the time horizons. I wanted, well, somehow I got the wrong table. I need to change it, and I need help here. I have to wait for some technicians to help me. But let me explain. I'm going to show you new drugs, new medicines, new molecules, and the new indications for all drugs. So in the columns, individual columns, where you will have the announcements, and you will see the news here. You can filter the table. You can click on this square showing the medicine programs in the open treatment and the chemotherapy catalog. We can also actually filter the first reimbursement and further indications, and we can monitor new indicators. We have multi-indications specifically in oncology. Therefore, we will be able to see what is the policy of the combined or multi-indications is taken by the ministry, how the ministry cope here, and how we improve access to these technologies. I specifically encourage you to use this tool. You can check all the data and updates. Somehow I have technical problems again. Okay. All right. Additionally, you will be able to filter individual diseases. So you can click on these layers, and you can enter individual areas and specific diseases. The list will you will get the drop-down list, and you will be able to filter all these individual areas. It's not the end yet of the very specific information. The more specific information to compare areas can be found on the next time. And here we see some aspects to be monitored. First and foremost, please, this is the incremental in a cumulative way. You can monitor the picture. You can monitor them in individual periods of time. At the bottom, you will get the sum of time, so the availability in which we can provide a given technology, drug technology in the Polish system. And on the left-hand side, you will see all registered technologies. On the right-hand side, you see the time for the reimbursement, and this time median as of 2015 for the new molecules amounts to 713 days, relatively long, as you can see. Of course, the situation may vary in different areas, and on these diagrams you will also see distribution of drugs and medicines, so you will see whether it's a stable trend or maybe the ministry has been introducing any changes in access to drugs. What's important here is the possibility to filter related to specific diseases. If you click on a given arrow, you'll be able to, let's say, move to the individual disease. Let me go to the lung cancer. Individual areas, individual indicators, indications, and over time, you'll be able to see how they evolve and what are the steps that the ministry undertakes. Availability is different in various areas, so these diagrams will change, will be modified, and clicking on them, you'll be able to get to display more information. What is the key aspect from the perspective of the whole key? On this website, the tool is very simple, interactive, intuitive. You can just click on things that you're interested in and you'll get instantly all necessary information. We wanted it to be this intuitive tool, and this should be a tool to present any data and a scope of any molecules. We do hope that this Polish radar will be a true radar. It will allow to monitor the reimbursement situation, and we do hope that it will be a subject of a debate as a tool for different meetings. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Władysiuk, the Vice President of HTA Consulting. So some technologies, innovations, and you get lost, Madam Doctor. Well, things happen, ladies and gentlemen. Now you can see some KOLs behind me, because in a moment we are going to discuss what is possible on the radar when it comes to innovative technologies, and we will discuss what we can do so that in the future, as Mr. Beliniak said, we are able to go towards green. So we do hope that in 2-3 years, when we present Access Gap, we will be greener. The tool that you have seen, the Polish Reimbursement Radar, it's already tradition that the long weekend I spent with Access Gap. On top of that, we have now the Polish Radar, Reimbursement Radar, so you can really use it on your mobile phone. You can click, you can verify, so it works really perfectly. Now, let me invite the representatives of pharmaceutical industry, and not only. Let me invite. Well, unfortunately, Minister Miłkowski is not with us today, but the ministry will be represented by Mateusz Oczkowski, the head of Reimbursement Department in the Drug Policy and Pharmacy Department. Welcome, sir. Today we also have guests online, Professor Dorota Zozulińska-Ziłkiewicz, MD, you met her already today, until recently President of the Polish Diabetes Association. Good morning, Madam Professor. We have Professor Konrad Rejdak, MD, PhD, President of the Polish Neurological Society, the head of the Neurology Board in Poznań. Bożena Cybulska-Stopa, MD and PhD, Chief Medical Officer for Clinical Oncology, Lower Silesian Center of Pulmonology and Hematology Oncology in Wrocław. the treasurer and chair of immuno-oncology section of the Polish Society of Oncology. Good morning. It's our great pleasure to have you with us. And we also have Professor Andrzej Fal, the head of allergology clinic from the hospital in Warsaw. Even though Warsaw, he joined us online. Sorry that I'm sitting moving back towards you, sir. Wrocław. Okay, I joined you from Wrocław. All right, so we also have the person that you met already, Madam Magdalena Władysiuk, Vice President of HTA Consulting and the General Director of Employers Union of Innovative Pharmaceutical Companies in Pharma, Michał Beliniak. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. During discussion, you should talk whenever you feel you want to join us. It's not going to be easy because some of our guests are online, but still we will try to manage. Well, this time we are not going to thank Mr. Miłkowski because the report is sweet and bitter at the same time. It's better, but it's not as good as we would expect. That's why I would like to give floor to Madame Zozulińska. The situation in diabetes is still difficult. What has changed over recent 12 months since the last meeting, and why it did not change into much better? It's also a question of diagnostics. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you again, and let me start from the best wishes. This 30th anniversary should be a great foundation for the better future for in pharma, new technologies, and medical medicine technologies. Let me thank for everything that happened so far, for this great tool that will help us to analyze certain processes in new medicine technologies better, and definitely ministry and ourselves will be able to act more effectively for patients. If we look back 12 months, we can see that in diabetes, we only have one new molecule that received reimbursement. It's a consequence, probably, the fact that in the last 10 years, there is a high dynamic in these drug technologies in diabetes. And we do hope to see even higher dynamics, not only in terms of registration of new drugs and the faster than so for reimbursement activities. Diabetes, unfortunately, is in the very requires very long time, 1900 days from the registration to reimbursement of the molecule, and this molecule will help patients to prolong their life and to improve the quality of their lives. In diabetes, in diabetology, the access to new technologies is conditioned by other factors, unfortunately, as well. Our patients and we physicians have to face that. It's not only about the limitations related to reimbursement purely, but we do hope that in the positive decisions taken by ministry in the area of diabetology, in the perspective of the new technologies, we will get closer to the recommendations, and we should try to be as close as possible to international recommendations. As of 2005, every year we are one of two global societies on top, next to the American Diabetology Society. Our Polish society update the recommendations on treatment, and we do hope that if we when we meet again in 12 months' time, I will be myself or the Irina Kowalska will be able to say that we got closer in the reimbursement activities to the recommendations, and the gap that we still have is there. We are very happy about the everything that happened already. and we are very happy about the events in the diabetology. There is still much to be done yet.
What we want is, as soon as type 2 diabetes is diagnosed, we want the patients to be able to get the therapy that is meant to treat better and in a simpler and faster way and giving a chance of longer survival without complications. What would be your reaction, sir? So you started mentioning that it's a bittersweet report. That's the favorite flavor of the Ministry of Health. The sweetness sweetens our heart when we are trying to make new technologies available, which we have shown over the last few years. But the bitter motivates us to make even more efforts and not rest on our laurels. Oh, you're being very diplomatic, sir. That is my job. But for diabetology, indeed, this was an area that the Ministry of Health was afraid of. It's linked to a chronic disease, quite big populations that are quite demanding in terms of financials. And the ministry has been scared to take some brave decisions. So the last years, especially 2021, the latest technologies for GLP-1 analogs and flozins and gliptins, that was an area where we indeed showed that we are investing in chronic diseases that are important to us. And another molecule has appeared. This was mentioned. Perhaps it'll be more difficult to catch up with the scope that you have listed, because a lot of the molecules have become generic and are not subject of interest for reimbursement, so they cannot make up for those wasted years. We know that in the Polish reimbursement system you need to apply, and that's where it starts with an application. If there is no application, we cannot do anything in the ministry, as always. Mr. Miłkowski, the minister, thank you very much for sending representation, but the minister is in the joint committee of government and local government, and those are not easy discussions, believe me, I've witnessed them. But going back to our report, a deep breath after talking about diabetes, and now Professor Fall, looking at these outcomes, can we take a deep breath, or is it too early to feel comfortable, sir? Well, the breath is more adequate to the disease we're going to talk about, and that's bronchial asthma. From the point of view of what we have on the radar and what's within the interest, well, I have all the reasons to be happy. There isn't a big dynamic in the market of drugs for this indication. So the notes given by this year's report for this indication, which is very high, well, there's only a very small percentage of patients included in innovative therapy. If it weren't for that, we would be definitely a highest ranked country. But that doesn't change a very important thing that was listed in the very beginning. There is a lot of concern against the context of the drugs and the access to therapeutic and technological innovations. And the concern is linked to the long wait time. The median is over 700 days of wait time before a new molecule can be applied to an existing group. But when we're talking about a molecule or a therapy that is completely innovative, not something that replaces something that already exists, I believe such a long wait time in these cases, is not sufficient. It's not satisfactory in the long run. As everywhere, I'm sure at the end of the day, it's about the money. But, we've spoken about asthma, but looking at the expenditure on drugs, we're looking at, just expenditure, the cost. Most analyses, though, including HD consulting, include what is called indirect costs as a component. And for asthma, that's a very high cost. According to Americans, it's up to 60–70% of the overall costs in some age populations, because this means that a person who is badly treated for asthma cannot work. And to a large extent, those are young individuals, or at least productive age, if we use the bad obsolete terminology. Now, if we want to look at what is actually profitable, and if we want to verify that from the point of view of the law, looking at the savings that can be made on indirect costs, I think these savings would definitely grant us a consent from the Ministry of Finance even to extend the package of treatment that could contribute to such savings. Let's be honest. It is the Minister of Finance that oversees the Ministry of Health. And whenever the payment is an issue for healthcare, drugs and technologies, well, that is something that the public authorities have to do. Well, I think many countries have already included indirect costs into their analyses. I think Poland should do it too. Thank you. As a journalist, I must say it's difficult to say who is the Minister of Finance these days, but let's put the Minister of Health into the basket as well. Let's go into the completely new area that's been included in the report, and that's Parkinson's disease. And a question to Professor Radar. There's been a lot of positive findings in neurological diseases. Why are you identifying this situation as unfavorable? Indeed, we have seen a picture of neurology as a very widespread area, and we've got a lot of disease groups. SMA has been listed, which is a rare disease, but still an absolute leader in terms of accessibility. SM as well, where there's been a huge leap in the access to the latest drugs. There are just some exclusions there. For Parkinson's, what we see in the report is completely new supplementary drugs, and they will surely be more widely available on the market soon. We need to look at this from that point of view. In general terms, the situation is improving in this field. We have the program for treating the advanced phase of Parkinson's disease, and what we see dominating there is invasive therapies, deep brain stimulation, duodope, intra-intestinal treatment, apomorphine subcutaneously. And now I'm really glad that we've had such a great analysis and initiative to capture all the novelties. Sometimes even faster than they can access our market, but that shows that the analyses are going to be widely available, and we stand a chance of actually shortening the wait time to reimbursement for the new drugs, which is something that we are hoping will improve the situation of patients. For Parkinson's, I believe back in 2022, there's just been one amendment in the drug program. There were no applications for new technologies, so we're still awaiting. Oh, you are quite motivated, sir, aren't you? We are not afraid of challenges. We have showed you quite well that generally we are looking at investing in healthcare. So it's not just expenditure. This is investment, and it pays also from the PR point of view. Let's see. Your report shows that it's well, bittersweet. Poland is number 2. It goes hand in hand with Slovakia. I still do have a few questions, sir. I will respond. But there is the weight report that has showed Poland that has progressed from 25 to 21 in the ranking. So Olivia also shared that Poland has been ranked the highest since the beginning of the ranking. So we go through all the reports that are published that you author, and then we sit down and drink coffee. No, when we read the press, you can find out a lot from the press what awaits us, and that is a very smart approach. I motivate my team to start the day with that because it's very motivating. Oh, I'm glad. Let's leave some of the sweetness still and go to oncology. As we saw in the report, there are quite decent outcomes there. Professor, you specialize also in immuno-oncology. In your view, does the approach of clinicians also change Poland's ranking in the report? I'm talking about mentality, I'm talking about the attitude to treating patients. It's not just decisions on administrative level, but it's also the way they are put into practice, right? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you also for this question. Today, innovation is not just about innovative medicines. It's not just the reimbursement of these medicines that you are talking about here. If you looked at the slides that our general director was presenting, they displayed some of the tools that they were using for the analysis of this report. And diagnostics was mentioned as well at the end, and that's the basic thing for what's really happening in oncology right now. Without good diagnostics, without basic diagnostics, when we are diagnosing the cancerous process and then the deep diagnostics from molecular tests, we cannot treat the patients, and that's one thing. And another thing is that it all has to be organized in the country. It's not about reimbursement of drugs only that's innovative. What's happened over the last period is that the National Oncological Strategy and Network have been introduced in this country. What is innovation? Let me quote a definition. It's a series of actions leading to creating new or improved products, technological processes, or organizational systems. And as a matter of fact, what innovation is really about is to reorganize our healthcare service, and that's what the oncological network is all about. If we have new innovative drugs and the access is great, the ministry is doing their best to reimburse those drugs so that patients have access. But unless we are really well organized, unless we have a capacity to quickly diagnose cancer and to quickly put the patients on the treatment path, well, these drugs will serve nothing, right? And as a matter of fact, the report that you have published shows, on the one hand, that innovation and drugs are very important, that they improve survival, that they improve quality of life. But on the other hand, we always need to take into account organization. Without good organization, we will not move forward. Very important conclusion. Thank you so much, Professor, for that. When I look at drug technologies, well, oncology ranks high, but as far as I can recall, it's just 40% that are being reimbursed right now. It is true, in 2022, the Ministry of Health reimbursed 115 new molecules for new indications. A lot of them were oncological. halfway through this year, we reimbursed 58, and 39 out of them are oncology. So we are actually focusing on providing access to new technologies, but we cannot make up for the time that has been lost since the beginning of the Act on Reimbursement. We show various statistics of reports, intervention, and we show graphs that demonstrate how this has been changing since 2012. Some of the technologies have become generic and are no longer within the interest of the relevant authorities. The life cycle of a drug is determined. A pharma company has a specific window when they want to apply for reimbursement, and when that window passes, they are no longer interested. So what we can hope is that some entity producing a generic drug will apply for reimbursement, and that happens. But we cannot make up for the time that's already been lost. We can only work with what we have. Doctor, I'm looking at Dr. Władysiuk right now. The Polish Reimbursement Radar is a lens of some sort that checks what is being said in the ministry against practice. It also shows how clinicians work. What do you think is the biggest limitation that could be removed from the administrative point of view so that we can jump ahead one level? I see three levels, actually. One that I think is the most important is direct access to drugs, so the time from registration to reimbursement, and where we want to have access to innovation as soon as possible, and that's a general expectation of everyone. From this point of view, we can see that this is speeding up every year. Yeah, we spoke about it last year as well. But we must admit, we see that those areas that are considered to be priority for the ministry and for clinicians in oncology are going a lot quicker. The median is 700 something, but there are areas in which it takes under 200 days. So we can see that the priority areas are sped up because there is negotiations and there are processes put into practice. Another mechanism is the medical fund, but not in oncology, sadly. Only to a small degree is it even present. But for rare diseases, I'm sure you will have seen that rare diseases are not doing badly at all whatsoever. So, yeah, to speed up the processes is one thing, and to set priorities, to prioritize. That's a new process as well. If there is a will from the bittersweet, then there is a way, and it can be sweet. And I think that's one aspect. Another aspect, which I think is key, I'm not sure if you've looked at the squares that I showed, the drug programs, how many molecules, etc., etc. So drug programs are in fact dominating. On the one hand, they are tools to limit expenditure to new expensive technology, but we have not moved ahead with reducing administrative burdens. They are very often inadequately valued, priced, which limits geographical access, and that's another challenge. When we give the opportunity, we measure access and we see numbers of patients growing. Better access means more opportunities. SMA is such an example that's been growing steadily, and the number of patients has been growing steadily. Sure. And Professor is nodding. So yes, access, meaning the use of the existing infrastructure that's already in place. We have that in neurology, rheumatology, oncology, but we don't have to create new financial administrative mechanisms. Drug programs have their latency as well. There are some limitations in use as well, and that's an ailment for all the programs. Now, second thing is the geographical limitation. I think that this is something that we should be monitoring more strongly. And the third point is trying to think about how to release some molecules that are already cheap from drug programs. The ministry, I know, has new ideas to go that way. to make sure that, well, there is a catalog of chemotherapy for oncology or hematology, but we do not have that in other areas. So I know that Minister Miłkowski is planning major changes, and I'm hoping that this will become a norm where we quicker move what is limited in drug programs to larger populations, to make sure that especially those drugs that are becoming more generic can be accessible to other populations. This is actually increasing chances of using innovation, even though they are older technology. But Reimbursement Radar is in place since 2015, but the gap comparison has only taken place for the last 10 years. So molecules that are at the end of their innovation period are also part of it still. Okay, we are going to talk about how to make that leap. But Professor, you also wanted to take the floor, please.
Talking about the access to medicine programs, drug programs, this access is getting bigger and bigger. But if we look back, 10 years ago, the drug programs were available only in the big oncological centers. Currently, the drug programs can be applied by smaller chemotherapy wards, the so-called daily chemotherapy wards, and smaller cities in the smaller villages. And this organizational change, this systemic treatment, moving away from the cities only, and this even distribution in Poland, even though some areas are still not well secured, ends up in a situation where patients have access to innovative technologies. This is the combination of the innovation of molecule and innovation of technology. The great innovative treatment, which is available only in Krakow, means nothing to a patient from Zakopane, traveling 120 kilometers for patients in the mountains area. It's almost impossible. This is one of the most important things that happened over 25 years. So better distribution of the systemic treatment and availability in smaller hospitals, chemotherapy wards available in the small centers, small establishments, because this allows patients to have the guaranteed access. The whole strategy is based on the centralization of the systemic treatment, because it's not only about the availability of drugs, access to drugs, but also treatment of toxicity of therapies, because bear in mind that patients quite instantly must receive the possibility to treat the complications of the systemic treatment. And you asked about the reactions of clinicians. Bearing in mind my function in this immuno-oncology center of society, the fact that we will be able to provide this treatment in smaller centers, but if something happens, we will be able to equip patients well in other possibilities. This is the basis for further development of innovations in Poland. This sounds really sad, the fact that the cure for patients is innovative. We have to go through this stage as well, Madam Professor. And now I would like to address the representative of the Ministry of Health, whose cities in Miodowo Street and Długa Street in Warsaw. Sir, once we talk about radar, please tell me what is your main focus now, and what can we do that the trend that we observe today can be either maintained or even accelerated, as Mr. Beliniak has said already. I'm not going to disclose our secrets from the ministry. It's too early, because it's still a month ahead of us. Many things may happen. And with some of you, we negotiate the applications, so we are not going to tell you what we plan, but approximately 20-25 new molecules and indications will be added. So the expected
rankingach, prawda, Państwo tutaj tworzą rankingi, top onko 10, tak, tą hematą.
Onco 10, hemato 10 rankings. We are following all these rankings quite thoroughly, and we are getting better and better.
Więc jeśli chodzi właśnie o zmiany w programach
When it
lekowych,
comes to
to
the changes to drug programs, in 2022 there were 35 changes, and this is a record that we had. We are not only working on the new reimbursement applications, but we also changed the drug programs. We simplified the programs. We came up with the methodology where we want to use certain standard provisions for the oncological or other programs, and so that nobody actually blames that we come up with very stringent requirements. They simply come from the indications of the products. When it comes to the qualification criteria, well, they were placed upon the request of the entities. The HTA analysis are specifically adapted. Everything has been measured and adapted to the price offer. This we cannot be actually overcome. And
szerokiej gamę produktów,
making the broad range of products available. More and more often we change the accessibility of certain drugs available under drug programs. We do it for oncological drugs, of course, but our hands are tied in case of non-oncological drugs. There are of course, these drugs should be available for the outpatient clinic patients, and in the amendment to the Reimbursement Act could actually release the potential of these innovative molecules. The best would be to have an intermediary category of availability that would actually satisfy everyone. As I said, we took we focus on many works, so we have to prioritize on our work, and we follow certain regimes and schemes, and we don't work ad hoc. Certain processes can go very quickly. The medical fund, for instance, this is a specific path of availability. Some companies use it already, not fully, however. But news is that 2 years later, one of the companies actually submitted a list of high clinical value. So the list was a fictitious list, in fact, and yeah, this is a very sad conclusion. Yes, but somebody actually, there was no time limitation, but in case of highly innovative products, we have published lists. They are not long, but not everyone decides to go this path. Some people simply are afraid of these novelties. They decide to go for some standard paths. Okay, out of top 10, would you be in the top, in the middle, or in the lower rank? We are taking the whole top 10. I'm asking you, where are you? Well, I take these decisions while we take the reimbursement decisions. Are there areas that are specifically close to your heart? Or will be close to your heart in the near future? Well, the ministry intensely works on the new drugs against the breast cancer. And this domain of science is present always at our sittings, and ministry cannot actually does not provide any notices without hematological drugs. And we are in contact with Professor Blechmerandum, who says that our expectations, the clinicians' expectations, have been fulfilled, and there are not that many gaps to be closed. So probably following the next notice, we probably would bring the gap completely, so there won't be anything else to work on in hematology. So definitely we will find something. It's good that you mentioned expectations. Definitely we will find out something. For sure we will find a lot still. And of course we want to be a source of inspiration for the Ministry of Health to initiate more work. And we do hope that our reports, this is like, you know, a visit card from new in pharma, because we're based on data. And,
pokazywać całe ministerstwo, tak pewnie
of
ministerstwo
course,
będzie starało się
try to
pokazywać
show
swoją
a
firmę,
certain
więc myślę, że to
perspective to the
działa w obie
ministry,
strony.
and ministry, of
Ja
course,
zwrócę
wants
uwagę
to
na jeden
take
ważny
the
element,
perspective
który
of the
pojawił się
companies,
dzisiaj
so
na
it's like
spotkaniu
both
naczelnika, padło słowo inwestycja, co
by
jest,
directional
myślę, no, dosyć
kind of journey.
naiwne.
Investment, some ministers said,
Inwestycja w
investment
innowacje,
in
myślę, że jest czymś,
innovation,
co
that's
warto
something
jest
that
podnosić. Ja się bardzo cieszę,
should
że
be discussed and mentioned.
to określenie padło, dlatego że ono do tej
I'm
pory
really
rzadko
happy
się
that
w debatach pojawiało. Ja zdradzę Państwu
this
też
word actually was
trochę
mentioned
kulisy
today because it was
powstania
not
radaru
too
refundacyjnego.
often too frequently
Tutaj pan
mentioned in the
naczelnik miał w tym swój
debates
udział,
before.
dlatego że w ramach naszej dyskusji
The representative of the ministry on social media once pointed out that some data is already outdated
decyzji podjętych przez ministerstwo
due to decisions taken by the ministries, and we thought, okay, maybe we should work on the tool that not only provides data once a year, but takes into account the recent updates. So there was a good dialogue. There was a positive, open dialogue, and there is a dialogue behind the scenes of ongoing as well. I can also declare that we are in touch with the member companies of our association. We receive data so that not only experts, journalists and patients can see the priorities that the representative of the ministry mentioned. It's worth stressing that certain things are important, bearing in mind that if some things are more important, the other would be less important. So we should also indicate that it's worth to talk about some other areas, not only the ones that fall under top three. I understand that we talk about advanced discussions, advanced molecules, but one thing cannot be forgotten, that there are new technologies ahead of us, and we still don't see them, and the process that is still ahead of us, the way we should take data that we present today is just a part of a picture, because what we call pipeline, what will come to the pipeline, this will be the innovations on CAR-T, mRNA. We hear about new vaccinations, new drugs for specific indications, and we have to be ready for that. So when we think about various ways of providing drugs, also in the context of the Reimbursement Act, it is worth to remember that the whole success that the ministry can show now was based on the provisions that were in place, have been in place for 11 years. So not always the provisions determines the success. The success can be determined by the dialogue. There are two parties to this dialogue, and we have to bear in mind that by changing provisions, changing legislations, we have to think about the future, things to come, because this could bring huge change for the patients. Professor, over to you. Following what Mr. Director said, we have to be aware that in neurology we must be aware of this great progress. The ministry will, in a moment, will have a lot of work. Neurological diseases, Parkinson's disease, the modification of the disease, the SMA, and the drugs that have been already made available in the US, registered in the US, where they soon will be registered in Europe. So we have to look and think about it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this part of discussion. And I would like to ask you to get back to your seats, and in a moment we will talk about the progress in the European research. Jasper Kunov, who will talk From the perspective of FPA, let me invite Mr. Kunow, who will address you, ladies and gentlemen. FPA representative will comment his perspective on these topics, and as we know, the European perspective is of great importance, and this will be discussed in a moment as well. And now over to Mr. Jasper Kunow.
My name is Jasper Kunow, and I'm the Poland country champion for the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations, or in short, FPA. It's a great honor and a pleasure to be here with you today. In FPA, one of our key priorities is to minimize or remove disparities in patient access to innovative medicines across the entire European Union. And why is this important? A new series of reports published by FPA is showing that there is a 10-fold difference in time to patient access and an 80% difference in availability of innovative medicines across countries in Europe. FPA's 2022 patient weight indicator tracks the availability of new medicines and the length of time it takes to get them to patients across 37 countries in the EU, the European Economic Area, and in the Balkan countries. And the results show that, on average, a new medicine starting from regulatory approval reached patients fastest in Germany within 128 days. This compares to 507 days in Czech Republic, 590 days in Slovakia, 827 days in Poland, and 1,351 days in Malta, with a European average of about 520 days. Now, the good news is that the situation in Poland has improved. In fact, Poland has recorded the largest improvement in the nearly 19-year history of the patient weight indicator survey to date. Amongst the 37 countries included, Poland moved up from rank 25 to 21 in terms of availability of innovative medicines. 35% of innovative therapies analyzed are now available in Poland, which is a step up, a clear step up compared to last year's results, according to which only 26% of therapies could be used in Poland. So it's important to maintain that good pace of positive change in Poland. But back to the European perspective now. FPA's European Access Portal, an industry-led initiative to create visibility around root causes impacting patient access to new medicines, suggests that about a quarter of the delays in patient access are due to delays in company filing. So as an industry, we really need to accelerate here. However, the rest, namely 3/4 of delays, occur as the medicines goes through the frequently long national pricing and reimbursement processes. And the portal data supports FPA's root cause analysis and identified the reasons for delays in reimbursement filing and decisions to be multifactorial. The reasons vary between the regions of Europe. Delays in filing in Western Europe are largely due to the value assessment process and evidence requirements. Delays in Eastern Europe, however, are due to health system constraints and the corresponding impact on companies' decision-making and resource allocation. So to summarize, our reports show substantial access disparities between Northern and Western Europe compared to Southern and Eastern Europe, with a 10-fold difference in time to patient access and an 80% variance in availability of innovative medicines on average. In addition, the reports show that there is no one-size-fits-all solution to fix the access issues and that there are regional or country-specific solutions required. Now, moving on to solutions, let me address the next topic. A few weeks ago, the European Commission published its proposal to revise the EU legislative framework for pharmaceuticals. This legislative proposal is the first major revision of Europe's entire pharmaceutical legislative framework in 2 decades, intended to put Europe at the forefront of innovation, modernize the 20-year-old EU regulatory construct, and establish equitable access to medicines across the European countries. As FPIA, we are committed to Europe, and we believe that this once-in-a-generation reform is a good chance to modernize how we authorize medicines in the EU and bring them to more patients faster. FPIA recognizes the expertise of the European Medicines Agency network and looks forward to a closer collaboration with the aim of facilitating the regulatory approval of innovations. We welcome leaner procedures at the European Medicines Agency and updating to the digital era, for instance, by introducing electronic patient leaflets. However, the European Commission's proposal to penalize pharmaceutical companies by removing intellectual property rights in the shape of a cut to regulatory data protection if a medicine is not available in all member states within 2 years of getting marketing authorization is unlikely to improve access to medicines across Europe. Why? Remember, the FPIA report are suggesting that 75% of the delays, 3/4 of the delays in patient access are due to innovative medicines going through sometimes cumbersome and lengthy national pricing and reimbursement processes, which are not in control of our industry. Instead, as FPIA, we are keen to play a pivotal role in improving access by committing ourselves to a series of actions, including the following 3 elements. Number 1, filing for pricing and reimbursement applications in all EU countries no later than 2 years after EU market authorization, provided that local systems allow it. Number 2, establishing a conceptual framework for equity-based tiered pricing to ensure that availability to or ability to pay across countries is considered in the prices of medicines. We would really like the EU Commission and governments to talk with industry about this. There won't be a long-term sustainable solution on access to medicines in Europe until we create a rational structure for different prices in different countries in Europe to be established. And number 3, employing novel payment and pricing models to help payers to manage uncertainty, budget impact, and sustainability of healthcare systems. So to conclude, not a single sector, organization, or legislation can successfully solve for access issues in isolation. If we are serious about equal access to medicines and vaccines for all Europeans wherever we live, we need all partners around the table and all hands on deck, building a shared understanding of the issues, a joint commitment to resolving them, and taking action now. Cancer patients do not have the luxury of waiting for new, safe, and effective treatment options. The time is now really to fix disparities in patient access to innovative medicines in the EU. And as FPIA, we are here to support. Many thanks for your attention. I wish you a great day.
Dziękujemy. Let's take the action now w takim razie i porozmawiajmy o tym, jak powinna
And let's talk about
wyglądać ta
what
mapa
the
drogowa.
the roadmap should look like.
Zapraszam do dyskusji. Pan Mateusz Oczkowski,
Let's discuss. Mateusz Oczkowski,
Polityki Lekowej i Farmacji Ministerstwo Zdrowia.
Ministry of Health, Head of Unit again.
Panią doktor Małgorzatę Gałązkę-Sobotkę.
Małgorzata Gałązka-Sobotka, Łazarski University, the Council for the National Health Fund, Deputy Head, Mr. Artur Fałek,
Pan Artur Fałek, ekspert
at the advisory firm Rafał Piotr-Janiszewski. Hello, welcome.
Śmiało. Drodzy Państwo, jeśli mają Państwo ochotę...
Ladies and gentlemen, if you feel like a glass of water, now is the time. I know it's very difficult later on to reach out for a glass, but we are going to talk about the future, so it's not going to be simple. Professor and PhD of Medical Sciences Marcin Czech, President of the Polish Society of Pharmacoeconomics, Niemke Finstra, the President of the Management Board of the Employers Union of Innovative Pharmaceutical Companies in Pharma, and General Director of Employers Union of Innovative Pharmaceutical Companies, Mr. Michał Beliniak, has just joined our panel.
O, no i tak właśnie myślałam, że każdy będzie
So I thought that everyone would be willing to have some water,
orzeźwienie lekkie.
some
Drodzy
refreshment.
Państwo,
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have just heard
a ja tylko przypomnę, że
this
Wojt
presentation.
pokazuje w Polsce dostępnych
Wait
jest
says that currently there are 59 out of 168 therapies that have been ranked today. 78% of them are reimbursed only for a limited group of patients. That was also confirmed by Access Gap. Sir, I'm addressing head of units from the ministry. What are you going to do about it?
To pytanie powinno być skierowane do
This
państwa.
is a question to you.
Znaczy do mnie, jak do mnie, to może
Well, perhaps not to
niekoniecznie,
me
ale
in
może
person,
popatrzeć w
but
prawo.
you may look
Tak,
right.
Rzeczywiście, bo jakby gospodarzem postępowania
To your
zawsze
right.
jest podmiot
Yes,
odpowiedzialny.
well, it is
To
the
on decyduje na samym
responsible
początku, w
entity
jakim
that is the
zakresie
host
chce, żeby
of
jego
this
terapia
procedure.
została
It is the responsible
dlatego
entity
nie
that
rozpoczynamy
wants to
tego
have
w
access to a specific type of indications. Who are you addressing your question to?
Państwa
To
przedstawicieli, tak?
representatives of
To
Inpharma,
bardzo proszę,
actually.
drodzy Państwo, skoro
All
zostali
right, ladies
Państwo
and gentlemen,
wywołani do
since you have been
tablicy,
asked
bardzo
to
proszę.
respond, please
Bardzo
do.
proszę, Pani Prezes.
Does the micro? Yes, it works. Of course. Well, our aim is, as also stated several times today, to make sure that patients can get access according to medical guidelines and as per the SMPC. We do intensive clinical research to make sure that the right patient can benefit from the right drug at the right time. So ideally, indeed, drugs are available according to that. What we are also confronted with is indeed, it has been referred to before, an intense negotiation setting in Poland, which sometimes leads to a more limited availability than we ideally would like. But make no mistake about it, in an ideal situation, all patients get access according to the SMPC, because that's exactly the population that has been best researched, where we have the most data. So if there's any doubt in the mind of someone at Ministry of Health that that's not what we would like to aim for, correct that here and now.
Ja nie wiem, czy pan naczelnik ma jakieś
I'm not sure if you do have any doubts, sir.
Potrzebuje
Would someone like to have interpretation of the English
Jakby chciał to
speaking?
skomentować, proszę Państwa, mamy generalnie w procesie refundacji
How shall I comment? Well, we have
kategorie
three
dostępności,
categories
tak?
of
Mamy dostępność
accessibility:
programów lekowych, mamy dostępność
primes,
chemoterapii,
chemotherapies,
dostępność apteczną.
and
I
pharmacy.
Dlaczego firmy decydują się tak?
Why
mimo wszystko
would
dać na to
companies
najbardziej, że tak powiem,
only apply
w kręgu
for
zainteresowań,
the
tak,
most
innowacyjnych firm farmaceutycznych, tylko programy lekowe.
limited availability drug programs? I've been in the ministry for 4 years, and I've had any applications for the chemotherapy catalog for an innovative compound, or
Panie dyrektorze,
there would be no limitations in population
Wydaje
then.
się tak naprawdę, że to jest pochodne
Well, it seems that that derives from many years of experience, actually, in our cooperation. But moving to the key issue here, we need to bear in mind that there are limitations, and that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, the practical use of these drugs in hospitals has its own conditionalities, and that could be true. That the issue of selecting the reimbursement category should be something that we should be looking at and talking about in depth, to think about whether the existing practice is really the best, or perhaps is there some room for improvement. And I accept that point, sir, as an indication of what we should be looking at, and indeed, perhaps next time this topic will be more standardized and structured, so that we can actually not just comment on what's happening so far, but also think about the benefits, mutual benefits that can result from this change in thinking. I do like such debate. We could perhaps end it there. We have shared experiences and reached conclusions, but there are still a few areas to talk about, and I'm hoping that you're satisfied. Can I add something, please?
Proszę Państwa,
Ladies and gentlemen,
to, co powiedział
it is true
naczelnik, tak?
what the ministry representative has said.
Inicjującym proces jest
The
podmiot
entity who
odpowiedzialny.
initiates the process is the applicant, the entity responsible for the drug. In their application, they specify a reimbursement path, which does not mean that it cannot be changed somewhere throughout the process. But I've always been of the opinion that the procedure itself is just an administrative procedure for reimbursement. And some time ago, I used to say, it is your job as officials serving the minister is to run the procedure smoothly. You have to do it within 180 days. This is your commitment. You shouldn't really care about the outcome. You should run the procedure, and that's your job. And it is the minister that takes the decision. It is the minister that runs the healthcare and drug policy. But the officials serve the minister, and that's their job. So thank you very much for inviting me for the report and for the radar. These are very good tools that give a great picture of what's happening in the reimbursement system. Certainly, the ministry has published what's new on the list, and that's been the case for a long time. And those have been Excel sheets communicating such information. Here it's presented in a very nice, dynamic, plastic manner. Now, with reference to the gaps, to the delays, shall we say, that the wait time from registration to reimbursement. Dr. Władysiuk explained last year how these indicators were made, and she said that from this point of view, we need to remember the decisive factors here. First of all is the delay in submitting application, and the second is the fact that these applications may be suspended. And that's the normal feature of administrative procedure. Upon request from either of the parties, the procedure may be suspended. And I think it'll be worth giving this information somewhere about when the application was submitted and how long the suspensions took caused by the responsible entity. I am very glad to be here, and I'd like to congratulate the organizers on inviting such an excellent group, but also a senior representative for the implementation of Reimbursement Act, a current one and the one in between, because that bridge stretches from the past to the present. Well, it's been 30 years, hasn't it? Well, perhaps not 30 years of the Reimbursement Act. The times before the Act were perhaps not darker, but different. The decisions were made differently. And let's put a full stop there. Still, what I want to say is that me and my team at the Department of Drug Policy and Pharmacy have yet a different narrative. I tell them, you work so that patients can have access to drugs. So find a pathway through the system in the admin procedure so that the patient can get the treatment as soon as possible. And actually, you are serving the patients, not the procedures, not the deadlines. Those are just technicalities. And I think that if this is that the department, would have at heart, then, and I think that's the case, then the details such as which list to apply for will be resolved easier, because it's just a question of talking about what's best for the patient, according to what the clinicians are saying, where the needs are, what the patients and their associations are saying. And it's just a question of sitting down and talking to it. And It's not just as if the ministry is going to say okay to all the solutions, whatever the companies might dream about, that they want to have that reimbursed in pharmacy so that everybody could have access to an X drug. Yes, that will happen to some of the medications, but perhaps the indication will correspond more to the construct of a drug program, of a catalog, which I believe should be called a catalog rather than just a catalog of chemotherapy. It should be extended beyond oncology, I believe. And so I think it's a matter of dialogue and sharing information on a pure technical level. Still, at some point, commercial entities and the public payer will be at both ends of the barricade negotiating, sharing risk, prices, conditions for the reimbursement, etc., etc. But the best entry to the system from the point of view of the patient, I think, is something that we have to discuss as early as possible, because perhaps there will be fewer suspensions there, as Arthur has said, and we have debated over that for hours when we created the national drug policy. Perhaps the gap will be slightly smaller because the Polish market might be more attractive for entrepreneurs, and they might want to enter the market sooner with their innovative solutions. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, but to make it optimistic and to wrap up, I'm very glad that Poland is moving forwards from 25 to 21, that the gap is shortening, that we look better against the backdrop of the Visegrad Group, and we're spending the smallest amount on drugs out of these four groups. That's a compliment to the ministry. Because our officials, for that money, can get a higher rank based on the same indicators. And that's it. I will give the floor to you again, Professor, but would the ministry representative like to respond? I'm quite curious to find out what
is being said. Jesteśmy bardzo dobrym zespołem. Udało mi się zbudować
we're a very good team. We've managed to build a strong, good team. You know that the minister has the ultimate decision, takes the most important decision, but it is the employees of the drug policy department. We have a strong and effective team that's aware of the fact that we actually work for the benefit of the patient. It's not just bureaucracy. This is how we work for Poland. We don't work for the procedures, right? That's what I want to teach them. This can be seen. There are multifaceted outcomes, and not just new technologies, but also streamlining things. Now, if I were to present the factors that impact procedure time. Those are three. Failure to submit a reimbursement application by the responsible entity. It is the filing of the application that starts the process. If the Ministry of Health initiates that, because we do have a right, we can address an entity to file such a request. Most of them are disinterested, saying that the drug is beyond our investment interest, etc. That's an investment. You can't deny that for the manufacturer. And the medical fund is quite a good example. We propose a fast track, 60 days, and then we see that the first applications are after a year. We publish a second list, and out of 11 technologies, we have only 5 applying, and 2 only submit this year, after a year. So even if we were to speed up these procedures and shorten them to 30 or 15 days, this won't make a difference, because there has to be a will on the part and an interest of the responsible entity. Another component impacting the procedure time are the suspensions for the applications. There might be some formal gaps that have to be rectified. There are quite a lot of them at the level of our evaluation or the agency's evaluation for the
beznamiętnie
medical
zgadzamy
technologies
się
and
zakładać
tariffs.
każdego wniosku, tak, na ten okres, który jest ustawowo dla firmy
we don't want to
przeznaczony, po prostu odmawiamy.
have
Tak? To jest
statutory
interes
suspensions
społeczny, tak? Więc
because
w
it's
interesie
against
społecznym
social
po prostu
interest,
odmawiamy,
and
po to,
we
żeby
refuse
zmotywować firmy
in
do
order to
tego,
motivate
żeby
the
doprowadzić
companies
proces do końca.
to just
Rzeczywiście
go
te
ahead
terminy
with the
skracają.
process
To
and
widać,
get
że
to the
to
end.
było
Yes,
znaczne, proszę
the
państwa.
delays are
W
shortened
przypadku
now,
właśnie ścieżki innowacyjnej
but for
tam średni
innovative
czas zawieszenia wynosił
pathways,
w 2022 roku
in
2 dni.
2022
Natomiast w
the
przypadku
average spent
standardowej
time was
ścieżki to
2
było średnio
years,
216
but it was
dni.
216 for another pathway. 216 days is almost a year.
Bo byli rekordziści, którzy byli
There were
zawieszeni 8 lat.
record breakers
Ktoś na
that
to
got
pozwolił
suspended for
kiedyś,
8 years, and
że
that
przez 8 lat
did
były
happen.
zawieszone. To było jakby przedłużane.
And this could be
Takim
extended.
trzecim elementem
And the
to jest, proszę
third
państwa,
component and third factor
przygotowanie
here
firmy
is the
farmaceutycznej do
preparedness
negocjacji.
of a pharma
Co
company to
zauważamy? Bo państwo wykonali
negotiations.
swoją pracę w zakresie sprawdzenia, jak
You
szybko
have
proceduje
checked
wnioski.
how
A my sprawdziliśmy
quickly we
dodatkowo,
proceed
jak to
the
się dzieje
applications,
w
but
procesie
we have
negocjacji
checked
państwa gotowości.
the
Jak
negotiation
widzicie,
process and your
państwo
preparedness.
często wstrzymują się
As a matter of
w
fact,
zakresie
you very
składania
often
finalnych ofert, tak, na etapie Komisji Ekonomicznej,
withdraw from making the
czekając na
final offer at the
rozwiązanie
level
na
of the
etapie
Economic
pana
Committee,
ministra. Średnie
waiting
obniżenie, proszę państwa,
to
ceny
provide the right
w
solution.
negocjacjach
Lowering the
15%.
prices is about
Więc,
15%
potem,
during
jak
the
widzimy
negotiation
niektóre elementy, prawda,
process.
bo my częściej wydajemy również decyzje pozytywne,
We
jak i negatywne,
issue more
to potem
positive
okazuje
decisions
się
than
w
negative
procesie
ones, but
drugiej
it
instancji,
turns
że
out in the second
firmy są
instance
gotowe
that
nawet
companies
obniżyć cenę tak o
are
50%.
prepared to actually lower the price by
Pytanie, dlaczego nie są
50%.
gotowe tak w
Why
pierwszej
aren't they ready to do it in the first
instancji,
instance
prawda,
then?
że to się dzieje dopiero w drugiej instancji.
Why
Wtedy
does it only
słyszymy,
happen
że
in the
proces
second
przebiega
instance?
zbyt szybko.
And then we hear that the
Proszę
process
państwa,
is
to
too
albo mamy
fast.
przyspieszyć,
Well,
prawda,
so
i działać
either we
szybko,
speed up the
albo
process
potem
and we
słyszymy,
act
że
fast,
działamy
or
zbyt
we
szybko
hear
i
later that we
centralna
act too
jest
fast and the
negocjacja.
headquarters is not prepared to negotiate.
Więc
Well,
niestety tak już po
it's not a
prostu
black and
jest,
white
że
world, sir.
to nie jest takie proste. I
It is
rzeczywiście
not that
gotowość
simple,
negocjacji jest
and
właśnie,
the readiness to
bardzo dużym
negotiate
elementem, bo mówię,
is
średnio myśleliśmy, że
quite an
firmy
important
farmaceutyczne
component.
potrafią
On
składać,
average,
3
we
pisma
know that
na etapie
3
pana
letters
ministra,
can be
więc,
submitted by one pharma
więc
company
rzeczywiście to
at
stawia
the stage
również
of
bariery tak
negotiating with
dodatkowego
Minister of
czasu
Health. So
przeznaczonego
there's an
negocjacji.
extra time barrier for negotiations.
Rysujemy mapę drogową
Okay, we're
zdecydowania
drawing
tej luki, to w
a
takim razie zwracam się
roadmap,
do
so
przedstawicieli
let me address
Infarmy.
representatives of
Czy
Infarma.
państwo są w stanie odpowiedzieć
Are you
na
able to respond
tę
to
próbę
these
zasypania luki?
to these points?
Yes, to come back to the first point first on that companies don't always file. As also shared in the video, FPA and all companies across Europe have committed to indeed start filing within 2 years. That's 25% of the delays that have been mentioned, and FPA has made a very concrete promise that we in Poland also follow. So going forward, that will be parked. That leaves us with the other 75%, for which we need dialogue. It's clear also from this discussion, everyone is here with good intent. Everyone wants to make sure that the innovation reaches patients faster and all the patients who need it. We also all understand we can't pay for everything at once. So we really need to look at what are the priorities going to be for Poland, and let's look at that together. And I think still having as an industry, collectively with the Minister of Health and with some key scientific societies, horizon scans, what is coming ahead? What should we prioritize? And take it from there and then commit to that is a good way forward. When we really take the intent, we take the capabilities, and we take the science together, I think we can get a longer way than arguing which percentage of the process is caused by this party or by this party or that party. That won't get us anywhere. So to reiterate, as an industry, we commit to file within 2 years. That's a promise we've made. That's what we can control. The other 75%, we can't control. We need to do that together. So this is really an ask that we've been doing repeatedly over the last few years. Let's truly do it together. Do those horizon scans, see what's coming, evaluate what the biggest problems for Polish healthcare are, and see where, through partnership, we can do more than anyone individually is able to do.
No, to w takim razie spoglądaj... Bardzo proszę, panie dyrektorze.
Ja tylko zupełnie wskazując na to, że
Let me just indicate that 50 plus molecules or indications that were mentioned, or 150 last year, it's like 50 or over 150 successes that were achieved by the Ministry of Health, and on the other hand, by the pharmaceutical companies that apply. And we should take this process in this way. We should look for the successful patient, and that's what actually we pharmacists, we are the graduate of the same university with the representative of the ministry, we should look for the success. And both Mr. Czałek, Mr. Czech, Mr. Czkowski, all they said that it's about delivering for patients. And what I can say based on the information or data that we have, that we collect from the member companies during the year, this is a clearly noticeable change in the number of successes. So this means that things changed. So this means, in other words, that we've managed to achieve something. The ministry asks why it does not happen at the level of the committee, but it happens at the level of the ministry. We can discuss it, but no matter what kind of doubts we have about delays or submissions, well, we have success, and this success was not available before. And let's focus, if I may suggest, let's focus on these elements that brought us to the success. And today we celebrate success, showing also this bitter side of the coin, showing that we would like to have more opportunities for joy. On behalf of the companies that I represent, I may say that willingness, openness is really, really big. And what you do, I address now the Ministry of Health, we do notice what you do, and we do notice that a change was achieved. However, so the first step from our side should be to focus on the things that prove to be effective, and they are more and more effective. So let's actually change things that are yet not effective to work better. Ministry wanted to motivate e-director. Of course, this meeting is not only just actually to say only nice things or bad things. It's about opening a new path, to motivate you to accelerate these processes. Many things or everything is up to you in this process. Ladies and gentlemen, many things depend on both sides. Madam President also said that we should properly outline priorities in the future. Now, let me look at Mr. Czech. Professor, in the perspective of time, when you look at the drug policy, do you believe we managed to fulfill the assumptions, and what kind of corrections should be made in the latest drug policy, and what we know already about this new drug policy? Madam, we should organize a new separate conference, two-day conference, so that I may I answer your question? Briefly, however, looking at this document, I hope that the director will supplement on what I'm saying. Definitely, ministry should add to this statement. But I believe that majority of the targets have been fulfilled. When we look at the main parts of the document, we made a huge progress in terms of digitalization of the system. Everything that is already electronic. We can't imagine life without e-prescriptions and all electronic products. Yes, electronic medical records, some things that may not happen perfectly yet, but it's getting better and better. Why am I saying that? Because this would give us lots of information on how we use drugs, what are the outcomes of treatment in reality, whether it's worth to reimburse certain drugs that fall under the drug programs or out there are left behind or outside the drug programs. I'm not even talking about the general importance for patients or the medical professionals. Then we have human resources and pharmacists who are with us here today. We have a completely new role of pharmacist, completely newly defined, both the pharmacists who are working both in the hospital pharmacies and the open universal pharmacies. I see mothers. I see the pharmacists in hospitals who say, who approach me saying, we would like to help, or we would like to provide advice about the treatment, and this is already a revolution. Of course, the medical experts to be appreciated better in terms of remuneration generation, this is yet another aspect that we've managed to achieve. Moving on, clinical trials and non-commercial clinical trials. There are more and more of them in Poland. If we look at the dynamics, Poland is the fourth market when it comes to the growing number of trials. This access not related to reimbursement. New indications, HPV, let me mention recently. It would be good, probably, to looking at the Constitutional Court decision. It would be good to improve the procedure of decisions which vaccinations should be reimbursed from the public funds and which should not. Many initiatives, of course, in this direction, including European initiatives like Vaccine Europe. Still, something to be done here, but this first part of the document is also being implemented. I also like the evolutionary way of implementing these individual changes, such as drug programs, living drug programs, you know what I mean, like moving drugs towards the better availability to catalog of chemotherapy,
listy aptecznej, tak? Czy tej refundacji aptecznej.
Pharmacies, reimbursement list for pharmacies. I believe it's worth stressing how flexible we become.
Dostęp do leków, dobrych leków,
access to good drugs, efficient drugs, and limiting the pharmacotherapy for patients when it's possible. I'm talking about diabetes. Diabetes is such a good example. But also, whenever we need to provide an extra drug because we replace oncology, cancers, falling under the chronic diseases, and some extra drugs must be added here, so we need funds for reimbursement. I mentioned flexibility, and last but not least, there are many challenges that we'll have to face, and the drug policy in this dimension becomes the old, outdated document. Even though it foreseen pandemics such as COVID-19, how to vaccine, let's say, refugees, but it did not foresee the pandemic, that it truly happens and that we would have such delays in treatment of patients. And you will not see anything about advanced therapies, gene therapies, you will not find anything about CAR-T therapies, because back in 2017 it was just, something completely new. Now it's a big challenge for the healthcare systems. We did not have such a challenge when it comes to drug safeties. We didn't have interrupted supply chains, EPI problems, geopolitical problems in the East. So many things have changed. And I believe that document definitely should outline again this strategic direction that we could call drug policy, that of course covers the drug safety and so on and so forth. And now I would leave floor to Artur, because for us important is to outline a roadmap that will help us to bridge the gap in innovative therapy access. Well, the drug therapy, here we have to mention the role of the pharmaceutical inspection, and this inspection, there is a lot to be done. This inspectorate should have a better supervision of the market. When we talk about the gap, there was one thing we did not manage. We did not stabilize the full budget for reimbursement. Document said that we should try to establish such a parity, because when you look at the success and you see the reimbursement funds have been increased. Over 100 molecules, of course, have been just funded from the system. So it means bigger expenditures for the system. So if we would like to increase the access to reimbursement, we have to also be ready to invest more money. I don't want to ask the ministry whether they know how much money they'll have next year at their disposal, but that's the case. Minister has a pool of money, pool of funds, and of course it's good to know how big the pool is, because they will be able to outline their priorities and where do they want to invest. Because they should, of course, focus on the targeted therapies. They will not be able to invest in everything. They should invest in everything that is in line with their policies. They should invest in things that are most effective. Marcin mentioned that we made a big progress in health. Well, we get huge number of information, so about the drug consumption, about therapies, and we don't have that many analysis of the outcomes, about the evaluation. So if you don't have much money, of course, I would like to see more money to reimburse drugs, because if we don't spend money effectively, then probably the impact of the investment of the population health will be higher than increase of some rates in open primary care system. But we have to measure it. So let's not look at the number of molecules, but let's calculate the health effect, whether the ministry's decisions translated into the increase of health, of course, availability, access, but improvement of the well-being of the population. Let me add one thing. Let's do it for reimbursement for drugs, where I believe the system is really is getting more efficient and better organized. Małgosia will say it's becoming more and more effective, and we see that it is more effective, but let's make it in a systemic way. Minister, do you know how much money you're going to have? No, not really. And we should mention 17% of the funds for services. We have a priority, and this should be done along with the Reimbursement Act. It has not been done. Ministry of Finance added up to 17%. So as a result of that, we don't know the budget for reimbursement. Next year, the budget will be increased over a year, and this is the reason behind is there are many reasons behind that. For instance, you're not able to contract drugs for the previous year because the lower reimbursement budget that is not known established at the level lower than the execution of the previous year means that actually the service providers do not get the contracts. They don't know whether the patients should be included in the programs or not. Another simple things, because you were asking about some administrative things that we can do. Let's give up on the contracting of drug programs. The reimbursement decision should come into force when the notice actually comes into force. No matter actually whether we talk about chemotherapy catalog or drug program, patients should come to the health establishment or clinic and receive the service. And this is this practical accessibility. In the past, we had 9 months delays. This is because of some administrative neglections, and there is no reason, there is no rationale actually not to sign contracts for the reimbursement of drugs. The National Health Fund on ongoing basis monitor the potentials of service providers. They know how many physicians, nurses they have, how many hours they work, so there is no need to contract it anymore. Of course, in the mode of competition, there is no need and there is no justification for that. Of course, I should not talk on behalf of the board of the National Health Fund, but as a member of it, we definitely recommend that the public payers decide on technologies that registered and allowed for the public finance are made available to patients as soon as possible. And the whole discussion behind, the whole discussion discussion that we have here mainly focused on the time parameter. Of course, time is a decisive parameter. It's decisive for health and life. So, of course, all limitations, and there were so many solutions proposed to limit the time for reimbursement of innovative molecules, but decision itself
nie decyduje o tym, że pacjent może spać spokojnie, że
make the patient sleep calmly and well. The patients regain their hope because the moment of making these technologies available, bearing in mind these gaps that we have to face, this is this administrative challenge
absolutnie przychylam się do
takiego
stanu, do tej grupy, której towarzyszy pewne
I agree with this group of people who are satisfied and euphoric about the fact that the time behind is the great success when it comes to reimbursement and innovative technologies from the administrative perspective, but from the perspective of the health capital, what should be our focus, what should reflect the reality and effectiveness of decisions. This is the health capital. This is the health condition of Poles. And let's see that in majority of our meetings, we don't start with that. The survival rates are this and that. Morbidity rates are this and that. Mortality rates are this or that. Yes, so we are talking about the accessibility to resources. We are not even talking about the effective use of them. In our discussion today, we did not talk about the diagnostic therapeutic standards. We mentioned simply that, but this is one of the most important barriers when it comes to the realistic access to medical services. Of course, the tools could be made available through reimbursement. In many places, Poles do not have the chance to get the most optimum treatment. And this is yet another element related to access to innovative technologies. Okay, but does the National Health Fund understand the need of innovation, or we still need to change the mindset here? Of course, it does understand the need for innovation. Otherwise, well, the National Health Fund is the ministerial agenda, and all these decisions are made as a teamwork, and recent years proved how actually conflict between the Minister of Health and the National Health Fund has been resolved. I remember when I joined the board of Health Fund 12 years ago, there were always some tensions between these institutions. Today, it is really through teamwork, and these decisions are the pure evidence of it, but we are lacking in the whole set of tools that we may say, yes, we strive to achieve this health value using the potential of innovations and the tools that Marcin Czech and Artur Michał mentioned. These are the tools for evaluation of effectiveness of all the interventions in the medical services, including innovative technologies. We don't need to convince ourselves today, because we sit here as the representatives of the sector, and we know that we can't survive without innovations. However, providing evidence, we could convince the citizens that we should actually increase the taxes on health. That we need actually to convince people, because whenever we ask whether people want actually to increase taxes on health, they say no. So of course, certain things has been changed, but it's about the mechanism of collecting taxes, but now we talk about the increase of these contributions. I would like to congratulate in Pharma Madam Dr. Władysiuk for this tool. It's perfect, but we would like to be in green. Let's remember, however, that the biggest limitation is money that we have, and investments, public investments, outlays that did not go beyond this glass ceiling. And so we are all the time knocking knocking the door, but we were not able actually to reach this 5% of GDP invested in the healthcare services. And one more thing, to be able to talk about the true success.
We're talking about realistic access to technology and its use in practice. Many clinicians and hospital directors say that the way drug programs are constructed and the way they are priced and everything that's linked to diagnostics, that doesn't really pay. And I hear that often when hospital managers say that this is the biggest burden to the liquidity of the hospital, those drug programs. From the point of view of what still is a priority, and that is the financial outcome rather than the health outcome. This is something that has to feature in the statement. Well, there is very small motivation to use all these tools, therefore. So this debate has to go beyond the circle of reimbursement decision. It has to take into account the mapping of all the bottlenecks where actual decisions are made concerning access throughout the whole country, regardless of where I live, where I reside, and which hospital I use. We've got networking in oncology, in cardiology, in hematology very soon. And to digress, I think that the success of the recent years has been that those decisions are made in strong partnership between clinicians, responsible entities, and the regulator. You can feel that in this debate. You can feel that in the comments, in the discussions, that this is indeed a concept of cooperation. But we're looking at the hematology. Here, we have what's needed already. So I wanted to say that seeing the financial limitations and the challenges of epidemiology, we should address the question of how many tools are available. The registration is a parameter on the European level, but how many of these tools do we need? Molecules, reimbursements, so that we can actually set the trends and achieve the targets. Is it a benefit or a hindrance that the drug policy is created? Or is it? Is that something you know? Yes, I've heard. I don't know. I don't have such information. Well, if you don't know that, sir, then we were not creating one. I think it's a theoretical drug policy. It's a big challenge and a lot of work. I remember being motivated by the minister to sign a drug policy, but then I was able to get out of the job saying that the necessary hadn't been implemented, and what was necessary for 2004-2008 was a Reimbursement Act, and I said that either policy or we go ahead with the act. You can't do both at the same time. Yeah, we're actually preparing a summary of the drug policy up to 2022. But I think the minister, as far as I can recall, said that there's some work in progress on the concept level. You perfectly phrased that, sir. You have to devote your time and effort to either making available the technology or to creating a document for the next 4 years, and you need to figure out what it is that we really need. I recall the words of Minister Twardowski. We cannot do it. We work 24 hours a day, and we never go home. So if you can't do it, just get up earlier. But that's not a solution. These documents need to be created in the right conditions, and we need to have an in-depth thought about that, because there's a multitude of factors here that compose drug policy. And I think it's important for us to wrap up and to have a new opening. It's important for us to have KPIs in mind that we can realistically achieve. Yes, to treat health as a business, right? KPIs, evaluations, I think it's easier to manage. Definitely specify the targets that we consider to be key, because I know that implementation of those will trigger other issues too. And perhaps if the document is very time-consuming, then perhaps we can make it more synthetic, but we should definitely define the key areas. I agree with what Marcinta has said, that we have had a lot of success, but we have had some failure too. When we look at the provisions of the previous document, I think the saddest chapter in our reality is prevention and the attitude that Polish people have to their own health. And I think the whole debate that's happening for HPV well, is a bitter aspect. And the decision is delayed as well, right, isn't it? It's not really looking the way it should and the way we would be expecting it to look. Okay, Director Beliniak, we're not separated from Europe. Do you think that the pharmaceutical review is an element of risk today? Or perhaps it's an opportunity today for us to identify more gaps and cover them quicker from the point of view of drug policy, strategy, KPI, whatever you call it. Definitely, we cannot forget that Poland is not an isolated island. And definitely, the treaties provide that issues of healthcare are in the competency of the nation, that each country can take autonomous decisions there, but still the European regulations and companies that we represent are global companies. They're not only local. And then there are challenges that lie ahead, and they are not only local challenges. Of course, they have their local specificity. Looking at what FP representative has been talking about is key. I totally agree that whatever journey we go on, we need to know the goal, at least the first stop, right? So that we can fuel up. And I think in the area of healthcare, these goals are absolutely necessary. Lack of drug policy, no document, no extension of this time perspective in whatever area. It's not something that I'm addressing here to the gentleman that's sitting on the panel, but it could have been extended by 2 years at least, right? And I think that setting up targets is key, long-term targets, and it has to take into account such components as a review of pharma legislation in this case. And I think there will be more reviews. We have Europa Data Space, where we will be gathering data and rules. We've got a multitude of data, but what do we do with it? All of that will play a great role and impact our targets. We can get prepared to some things. E-prescription has showed us that it can be very beneficial, especially in times of crisis. But here as well, thinking about solutions and implementing them, as Mr. Falk has said, we need to measure the outcomes. Our companies would like measurable outcomes because we want to know and we want to show how these drugs work. All of the work that has been put into hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars invested in therapies. Well, the goal of that is to prove that these drugs work, that they're effective. We want to have the possibility to show that. We want to show that this is an investment that brings a return. Therefore, it is not an expense for the budget. It pays off. Do we know where these savings are? No, not yet. And I think that drawing these areas, whether those are indirect costs or criteria analysis, a softer tool,
Niemniej jednak
Still,
konieczne jest to, żebyśmy się
what's necessary is for us to think about
w jaki sposób
how
te korzyści przynoszone
these
przez innowacje
benefits
wpływają na
brought
system
by
ochrony
innovation
zdrowia. Bez tego
can
tak naprawdę za
impact
każdym
the
razem będziemy
system.
prowadzić trudną
Without
dyskusję,
that, every
przede
time the
wszystkim z
discussion will be
NFZ-em. Przede
difficult
wszystkim, bo on jest
with the
dysponentem środków,
health fund, because
czy
the
to
health fund has the
warto,
fund,
czy nie warto.
whether it's worth it or not worth it.
Pan, że pan naczelnik powiedział
So
o
you have
inwestycjach w
remarked
zdrowie.
that investment in health is a phrase that has been voiced by the ministry, and I appreciate that. I will repeat that everywhere where it's possible. I'm glad this has come up as an attitude. It's just one word, but from the point of view of health protection, it's a very important word.
Tak, a ja
Professor
mogę
Czech.
jeszcze tak na koniec optymistycznie
A to jeszcze nie
Wrap
koniec,
up.
jeszcze mam
It's
dwa
not
pytania.
yet
to
the
dobrze.
end.
Nie, to bardzo proszę.
I have
To ja
still
chciałem
two questions.
troszeczkę rozszerzyć perspektywę.
Okay, let me just extend the
Bo takie
perspective
podziały
here.
pojawiły się
We've had
również, tak naprawdę cała dzisiejsza prezentacja
divisions,
dotyczyła
the whole
tej grupy V4, Europy Środkowej.
presentation was about
W
V4,
wypowiedzi
Central
przedstawiciela
Europe.
EFPI też pojawiła się
FP
Europa
representative
Wschodnia, Europa
also
Zachodnia.
listed Central,
Ja tymczasem
Eastern and Western
chciałbym
Europe.
zwrócić
But what I
Państwa
want
uwagę, że szczególnie w
to look
kontekście
at
tych
is
rozważań
that against the
europejskich,
background
my
of
od stołu
the
europejskiego
European
możemy
context,
już zupełnie
we
usiąść
can sit at this
z
table,
podniesioną głową,
you know, with our heads
ponieważ
up.
jak Państwo popatrzycie na wskaźniki makro,
When we look at the macro
to w
indicators,
PKB na mieszkańca wyprzedziliśmy już
GDP
Grecję,
per
jesteśmy w
capita, we
okolicach
are ahead of
Portugalii
Greece,
i doganiamy
we're
Hiszpanię.
somewhere
W związku z czym
around
wydaje mi się,
Portugal
że
and catching
dyskusja
up
o
with
biednej
Spain
Polsce,
from that
którą
point of view.
stać
So
na
the
mniej
discussion about the poor
i
Poland
tutaj
that
jest
cannot
takim
afford much,
troszeczkę biedniejszym
and
kuzynem
as a poor
zachodniej
cousin of
Europy,
the Western European countries,
no troszkę się staje już
it's
taką
becoming a
dyskusją,
little
która nie ma podstaw.
ungrounded
I
at this point.
ja nie chcę, żeby to był
And I
polityczny speech
don't want this to
narodowy,
be a political
ale
national
chciałbym...
pride
Dobrze,
speech,
but,
but
no nie, bo w porównaniach
well, we've got the
międzynarodowych to akurat są różnice kursowe i tak dalej. Nie
there's
nie
exchange
wchodźmy w
rate
szczegóły.
differences, etc.
Ale
Let's not
co
get into
chcę
details.
powiedzieć?
But what I do want
To
to
można
say
zresztą
is,
usłyszeć
and
nie
you
z
can
moich
hear
ust,
that
tylko
not just from
chociażby
me,
z ust, nie
but
wiem,
for
pana
example
profesora
from Professor
Johna Infantopoulosa, który zestawiał państwa
Professor
kilka dni
Infantopoulos
temu w
that,
Warszawie. Jest artykuł w sobotniej gazecie na RZ.
spoke about this. You can read about it
to, co,
in the
gdzie
paper.
Polska, w czym
Now,
Polska jest jak gdyby zostaje poza krajami Europy Zachodniej,
where
to
Poland
brak
lags behind
wdrożenia
Western Europe is
tej
lack of
ważności zdrowia,
implementation
czyli
of
tych 10
lack
czy
of
11%,
prioritizing health.
by zacząć od 8
the 10-11%.
PKB na
Let's start with
zdrowie,
8% of GDP
o czym mówił
for
Artur, co
health. This
wybrzmiewało
is
w
what Arthur has
wypowiedzi
said.
Małgosi,
This
że
resounded
my
in what Małgosia has said as
plasując
well.
zdrowie tak wysoko
If
w
we
hierarchii tego, co
put
jest dla nas ważne,
health high up in the hierarchy of what
nie
matters to
opowiadamy
us,
się za wzrostem nakładów na to zdrowie jako
we're
obywatele.
not
Jeżeli byśmy
advocating
to
for
zrobili,
that
to
increase of
razem z
outlays
tym
as citizens.
rosnącym PKB
If
na
we were to do
obywatela,
that,
mielibyśmy naprawdę
while our GDP
dofinansowany
per
system
capita
ochrony
increases,
zdrowia.
we would have a better
Wiem, że
financed
łatwo
healthcare
powiedzieć,
system.
ale
I
gdybyśmy
know
do
it's
tego dodali
easy to say
efektywność,
that, but if we
to
add on top of
moglibyśmy
that
już
effectiveness,
osiągnąć
może
taką
raczej
we
satysfakcję
could
przynajmniej jak
achieve
Czesi.
a lot
W
more,
związku z
at
tym,
least what the Czechs are achieving.
Ale
to
ja
quality
bez
and
kompleksów
accessibility,
usiadł i z
right?
rodziną
But then
europejską
we
rozmawiał
could sit
o
at
tych
the table,
rozwiązaniach
the
europejskich, które
European table,
są
and talk about the solutions
korzystne,
that are beneficial.
które przynoszą wszystkim,
And that,
wszystkim obywatelom Unii Europejskiej po prostu lepszy dostęp i
bring just
wyższą
a better
jakość.
access and high quality to all EU citizens.
możemy przeznaczyć na
Well,
zdrowie. Nie ma problemu.
whatever benefits are being paid out, the 500 plus could be earmarked to healthcare. Okay, since we're at the European table, chair person, please, can I ask you, we can sit down at the European table with our heads up, but before we catch up with Europe in some areas, as far as innovative treatment access is concerned, Europe will be somewhere else at that point. Can we really make this revolutionary leap to bridge that gap sooner or not?
If we want to, and everyone is behind, certainly. Most of you know me as an optimist. We just need to really be aligned and know what direction we want to go. And I've heard a lot of people talk about the strategic value of innovation and of medication, which is undoubtedly there, but only in a right healthcare system where there are diagnostics, where there is follow-up of patients and there is care. And we also have a wish to measure, indeed, the overall value delivered for patients. So tying that to the very discussion, which might be rounded up somewhere soon on the reimbursement law, why not look together and see how we can all sit together and go towards a more value-based healthcare system? Look at the entire cycle of care as given to a patient and see how we can increase the overall value delivered. And when you do that right, there's so many examples across Europe that show that the cost per patient is actually decreasing. Already now, Poland has had a huge success indeed, as Professor Czech also said, in what it gets available for the amount of money invested. However, if we look forward, we know it's not going to be enough. Everyone knows that. It's not going to be enough. So we need to find a new lens through which to look at the healthcare system that we can implement. Let's look at European health data space. So much data will become available. Let's surf that wave, if you will, and say, okay, if we have all the data available, let's use that to measure the real value that's being delivered for Poles. Let's see how we can compare certain centers and by a very good data-based comparison, increase the overall value of care delivered. I would really encourage all stakeholders in healthcare to look at it like that. And every time we are on panels like this, I hear only willingness and enthusiasm around that idea.
Ja też, me too.
But we never get there. So let's...
That is true.
Oh, now I got a small translation in my ear in the middle, sorry. So let's then have that commitment doing that, but see how we can do that step by step. We have an SMPT database. We might like the drug programs, we might not. We might like the systems we have, but we have them. There's so many drug programs for which we have data that we can follow up. Let's pilot some value-based outcomes of healthcare systems with the data we have there. Let's add some e-health solutions step by step in which we can collect patient-reported outcomes. Let's add them. Let's indeed, when we talk about policy, design a journey ahead and see what we can do to add data point after data point to increase value step by step. It doesn't have to be a revolution. We don't have to overtake Europe at once. But if we go in the right direction and we use what we already have and we take from what will become available, whether we like it or not, we can be more effective and more efficient.
Recently, I participated in a very interesting conference in London where I heard that we should depart from value-based healthcare to value-based health. And that's a very important remark indeed. And I shall leave you with this and the last word to the ministry representative. Since we're drawing a roadmap to bridge those gaps, I would like to ask you whether in this term of the Parliament, is there a chance to complete the Reimbursement Act? Wow, that's a question.
I teraz co odpowiedzieć?
And what do I say? I'll say that tell the truth. I think everything will become clear this week. Have you got any questions? Now there is time for questions from the audience. Is it going to be adopted and signed? No, I think it'll go forward to the next stage, and that's all. And what happens next? Well, that's not up to us, really. The following stages. So you mean the government? Government meeting. Okay, well, time for the audience. Other questions? No? As far as I can recall, the Reimbursement Act came to the Standing Committee at least a few times. And it's Tuesday now, the government meets today. You can add 2 plus 2. Could you check the agenda, whether the agenda of the government meeting today is the Reimbursement Act on the agenda? It isn't. So how will it get to the Parliament? I mean, how's that going to happen? I cannot comment. I haven't got the authority to make statements, but I think, well, I was notified that everything will become clear this week. And as you can see, if it's not on the agenda, it's not on the agenda, so it is clear. You're better informed than I am, clearly. Okay, many thanks. Would you like to add anything to wrap up the discussion, sir? I am very glad that our cooperation between the Ministry of Health and innovative pharma companies has improved in this area.
coraz więcej, że tak powiem, wspólnych aspektów
we have
odnajdujemy
more
i w tej
shared
dyskusji
aspects
jeszcze
in our
zapraszamy także
debate.
klinicystów,
We
pacjentów,
invite
prawda, i ta
clinicians,
dyskusja jest bardzo
patients,
owocna,
and this is a
co
very
rzeczywiście
fruitful
pokazuje,
discussion.
że
And that really
razem,
shows that
wszyscy razem jesteśmy w stanie
when we're together,
tutaj dokonywać tak
we
rzeczy,
can
które służą
make
całej
things
Polsce.
happen
Tak?
for the benefit of
I
Poland.
rzeczywiście takie raporty,
And
które Państwo tworzą,
reports
są
such
bardzo
as yours
przydatne dla
are
nas,
very
tak? Bo my nie
useful
jesteśmy
for
po
us
prostu
because
czasami
sometimes
wydolni, prawda, żeby robić
we're
takie bogate
not-
raporty, które
we don't have the capacity to draw up these reports that give immense knowledge to us. You need to start with information. And gathering the right information is the first step to making things happen, making extraordinary things happen. And well, you laughed that we do our press study exercise, but that's the change in attitudes. That's where we start. We know your expectations, and it's not just the health minister or head of unit, but every official that deals with every single case, and there are thousands of them every year.
I'm glad we came up with our expectations not only in press, media, but also during this debate. I wanted to thank everyone who came to this meeting. I would like to thank you for your presence. I would like to thank all those who are with us online. We would like to encourage you to use both tools. Each of them takes a different perspective on the accessibility aspects, but we believe that each of you will find the source of information. We are very happy that the ministry also takes such position. We encourage you also to use it, and we do hope that it would improve the dialogue that we have. We are not sharks eating everyone who comes to the meeting, so we will be very happy to continue these discussions based on such meetings. We will be happy actually to run further considerations because we hope we see all goes the right direction. Maybe we are missing some aspects, the current drug policy, but we do believe and understand that we have a common goal and we should pursue it. The ministerial radar that summarizes actually everything, all the data. This is also interesting, and I'd be happy to see it. Maybe it can be translated into the further aspects. And I would like to thank all the participants. I would like to thank the representative of the ministry. Thank you for this sweet and bitter discussion. I would like to thank Madam Małgorzata Gałązka-Sobotka, Deputy Chairman of the Council of the National Health Fund, Mr. Artur Fałek, expert in the advisory office, Rafał Piotr-Janiszewski, Marcin Czech, Professor, MD, PhD, President of the Polish Society of Pharmacoeconomics, Nienke Fenstra, President of the Management Board of the Employers Union of Innovative Pharmaceutical Companies in Pharma, Michał Beliniak, General Director of Employers Union of Innovative Pharmaceutical Companies in Pharma. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. Thank you who followed us online. I would like to thank everyone who stayed with us until the end of this meeting and discussion, and see you next year. Thank you.